Hi, welcome to another Revenue Hub Expert Insights discussion. Today we're joined by our regular guests from berner+becker, Veit and Till. In this discussion, we consider what is the current situation and challenges being experienced by hotels in Germany. We cover many topics, including the differences between city and coastal markets. Is there enough domestic demand to keep German hotels open as we unlock? Increased competition with new hotels coming on the market, and finally, pricing, length of stay, and distribution channels. I hope the discussion is of interest, and please do feel free to comment below. We're always interested in your thoughts and views. If you like what we're doing, please subscribe to the channel and click that bell so you know when we have new content. And please don't forget a simple thumbs up. It really helps raise the profile of the channel, and in that way, you can help us help others. Anyway, hope you enjoy it. Roll the intro. Hello again, guys. Veit, Till, how are you both? You well? Veit, you well?
All good, yeah, thank you. Good to be here again.
Excellent. And Till, you?
Yeah, all good. Enjoying the small flakes of snow that we had since yesterday. So winter is back.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Oh, where did 2021 go?
No one knows. Winter season is coming.
It's bizarre. What is it? Game of Thrones, is it? Winter is on its way.
Oh, man.
Anyway, look, great for you guys to join us. We're taking a slightly different approach. Hopefully there will be some obviously insights that you guys are seeing working with your hotel clients that we will pull out of this discussion. But we thought it didn't quite seem right with all that is going on. And just to clarify, we're focusing here in this discussion around the hotel market within Germany and kind of what are some of the implications of things that are going on and how it's impacting. And because you guys have quite a broad spectrum of clients that you work with, it felt useful to get you guys on to look at what are some of the differences, what are some of the implications and challenges, where there may be some shoots of positivity that might be showing, and then what can we kind of understand and accept that these are the situations that we are in, but what can we be doing in anticipation that at some point in time things will start to return, and rather than just sitting here waiting for the next news cycle or the next press briefing, what can we be doing with that time to try and working within the news that we have currently? So that probably tees up what this is about. It's a slightly different format. It's not a deep dive into a particular area around revenue management, because in all honesty, that probably wouldn't be relevant at this moment in time. So with that kind of set up as the purpose of this call, it probably makes sense to kind of just get from your guys' perspective, what is actually going on. And I know Germany is different to the UK, so I know there are some sort of structural differences as to how it works. Up to you where you want to take this, but it's really just about understanding what is going on and how this is impacting the hotel sector at the moment. So let me be quiet and hand it over to you guys.
So you want to make a start there?
Yeah, I can make a start. Well, the current situation, of course, is not looking very bright at the moment. There is only let's put it the other way around. All touristy travel is basically banned. You're only allowed to travel for business reasons or any other reasons, for example, medical treatment, etc. So there are lots of hotels closed due to just the lack of demand. I just had a brief look at the FEMAS figures from February, and overall, just to name three city markets especially, Hamburg is down by 90.3% in terms of RevPAR. Wow. Munich is down 89.3%. That's on the better end of the numbers, and Berlin is down minus 90.7%. So you see there is not really that much demand left, and all of the three markets basically have single-digit RevPAR figures. So we're talking about RevPARs below the 10 euro.
I just wanted to ask you if you have those numbers ready at hand. That's below the 10 euros mark, yeah?
Yeah, it's below the 10 euro mark. And if you look at the like last years and the amount of new hotels being built and new rental agreements being made, like all of them were basically going higher and higher in terms of rental payments. And my personal feeling is that many hoteliers can't even cover the cost for renting or leasing their hotel rooms with single-digit RevPAR figures.
Wow.
Yeah.
But yeah, so at the moment it's looking quite bleak, I would say. But on the other hand, especially for the hotels that we have in the leisure destinations, let's say coastal regions, Baltic Sea or North Sea, but also moving further to the Alps, you see that there is quite some interest from guests to travel in the summer. So we do see some pickup. We see lots of website traffic, but, and that is like the big but that it sits there in the middle of the room, it's not clear when people are allowed to travel again, because there's no clear perspective, no clear date set yet. So people are, that's at least what we're seeing, hesitant on committing to a booking. They are rather shopping around and looking at the best offers and try to build up like a wish list where they want to travel to.
And that's one of the things that interests me the most. Like, what does it do actually to the hotel's landscape and also to hoteliers in terms of, you know, the mood that they are currently in, right? Without having that clear perspective, the only thing you can do right now is pretty much to accept that situation where you're in, right? And that probably gives you a little bit of the base in order to be, well, slightly optimistic and have a clear head, basically, to look into the future if you accept that current situation. But now we have that lockdown, I think, until the 18th of April. Then we don't know what's going to be happening after that. Maybe the lockdown is going to be prolonged. Maybe, you know, there's regions that are allowed to be opened up again, depending on the incidences, the numbers there. But God knows. And if I'm just summarizing a little bit the sentiment that is, in my opinion, out there in the industry is, yes, there is slight optimism that something's going to be happening in the future, obviously. That's mostly concerning, obviously, destinations where there is a foreseeable amount of business to come back at a very short term, specifically over the summer. But then there's also that, well, I don't want to say people lost the faith, but you can also see from especially city hoteliers and destinations where there's not an immediate sign of recovery to be foreseen, basically, that the optimism is probably lacking, and that's something that has to be overcome somehow by giving perspective, and that's again a political topic which we don't want to go into.
No, we don't want to get political. And it sounds from what you were saying that there is I guess there's a couple of questions come out from this. The first one is there seems to be not a big divide, but there seems to be a difference from what you were saying between what you're seeing in city locations as opposed to coastal leisure resort destinations. Did I pick that up okay?
For sure. If we look at our client base, and that's surely obviously also the case outside of our client base, right? But if you look at city hotels, they are mostly closed. Yeah. And if you look at destinations like Munich, also if you would look across the border to Austria, if you look at Vienna with, you know, having a substantial amount of or substantial share in the past from international travelers, that business is nowhere to come back within the next couple of weeks, months, whatsoever. Then there's a serious risk of many hotel businesses going out of business because the perspective is not there, right? And in that sense, yeah, you find those differences again within our client base. City hotels, almost nothing happening basically, but yeah, on a couple of occasions you have some business travelers obviously flying around and traveling. But if you look at coastal areas, completely different pictures, right? Those hoteliers, they are preparing themselves and they are ramping up because they hope for that good summer season again, which is hopefully going to be as great as last summer season was, right?
Yeah, just wanted to say, if you look at the numbers from last year, the German Basic Statistics Office showed a decline in RevPAR for like the two most northern parts of Germany. So Schleswig-Holstein, which has access to both coasts, is minus 20%, but also you need to consider that there was the lockdown over Easter, just the lockdown and less travel as of mid-October. Mm-hmm. So in the summer it went very well, and they, let's say, only lost 20%. Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, the other part of Germany that has access to the Baltic Sea, lost 19%. And then putting that into contrast, the full year 2020 versus 2019 in terms of revenue loss in Berlin was 64%. In North Rhine-Westphalia, it was 47. In Hamburg, it was 55. So also here you see the big difference between city destinations and on the other hand, these coastal leisure focus areas where travel was still booming. And you could at least clearly see that people were kind of trying to swap their beach holiday at the Mediterranean for, let's say, a beach holiday at the Baltic or North Sea, but they were not changing the pure purpose of their travel. So from leisure, beach focus destination to city trips.
I'm with you. Well, it brings me on to another. I'll say this, but it's certainly not making a judgment on. And we may have been misinformed over here, but we read something that it was okay for somebody to leave Germany to go for an Easter break to an island resort, but that they couldn't go. And again, I am certainly not treading on any political toes or making judgments. So just a fact finding, because it leads me on to my next question. But was that a case that some people could travel out of the country and go, but they couldn't go to a resort in Germany? Was that right?
Yeah, that's right. That was always allowed. There has been no travel ban.
Okay.
I guess.
So you can't travel within, but you can travel out.
Mm-hmm. You can travel within Germany, but not for touristy trips, but just for necessary travel in terms of business or medical treatment.
Right.
I guess that's different for you in the UK, where you're not allowed to leave the country.
Yeah.
And there are quite high fines imposed. But over here, it's basically allowed. You can go anywhere in the world, but then there are certain countries, or for some countries, even regions that they define that are basically measured on the number of cases per capita. Mm-hmm. So there has been now a lot of talks going around, or basically lots of newspaper articles around people traveling to that one Mediterranean island that belongs to Spain, but is very popular among Germans.
Also called the 17th Bundesland.
But for example, lots of parts of Greece were also always open for travel, and because they had hardly any cases or only a few cases, they were not declared risk areas. So it was always allowed, even during last year, to travel there and come back, and you don't have to quarantine, because that's basically the breaking point for travel also internationally. If you need to go on a quarantine coming back, and over here, it means if you're coming back from a risk area, you need to quarantine for 14 days. But you have the chance to test yourself on day 5. And then basically with a negative test result, you're basically freed again. You don't need to wait the other days in quarantine.
I've got you. Okay, so if I was based in Germany, wanted to travel to Greece for a break, I could do that, and depending on its infection levels, would maybe have a different. Would I have to quarantine when I come back, wherever it's coming from, or is it dependent on what the levels are in that other country that I'm traveling to?
It's dependent on the level. There's the Robert Koch Institute, who's basically that virology institution here in Germany. They declare like which areas are on the risk list and which ones are not. Usually, whenever there's the incidence goes above 50 towards 100,000, you're declared the risk area, and then there are other measurements. And I'm not 100% sure, but I think on this whole Balearic Island discussion, I think they now put testing for all destinations in place. That means you always need to get tested when you're returning to Germany, and it doesn't matter if it's a low risk area or not.
Okay, so you could end up having to go into quarantine for at least 5 days until the test shows negative, and then you would be okay. Yeah,
you actually need to get tested before you're boarding the plane.
Oh, okay, right. Okay.
Yeah. Anyway.
And the airlines are quite strict on it right now. So you need to show them that you got tested officially. You can't do a test yourself. It needs to be done by a doctor, a medical institution, pharmacy, and then you're allowed to go on your return flight back home.
Understood.
Yeah.
Because it was leading me thinking about the differences between the city and the coastal, and then also different timings and what business will come back to where. I mean, I wouldn't know what the German market is like in detail. I mean, what is the domestic demand? Where how much of incoming tourism is needed for those coastal regions? And I would guess for the cities, judging on what you're saying there, it's pretty dependent on corporate business travel, meetings, events business. Can you just give us a bit of an insight into those aspects?
I think one of the things that I just came across while listening to you guys speak, there has been this sentiment in the industry to say we got a huge focus on domestic travel, but obviously right now this cannot be the case.
Well, yeah, that was my point.
This cannot be the case. Yeah. Or am I mistaken? But it will obviously be the case. But then you also have to differentiate. Okay, which kind of domestic business is going to be held by which kind of location in the country? And obviously, if you look at coastal areas, like those areas, they've never been known for business travel going on really. So it's more of the touristy stuff. And again, there it comes back to the point in time when people get their vaccines, when this is working properly, when they feel safe to travel, when the restrictions are lifted, when there's perspective. I think people are just ramping up to book their holidays. But then there will also be the factor to play in terms of buying power, really, from the people. With so many people having been, let's say, on what is it called in English? Furlough. Yeah. Furlough. And also, certainly a lot of people having lost their jobs, not only from within the industry, but also outside of our industry, from other industries that have been impacted by this whole pandemic as well. There's obviously money missing, right? And, let me just think about a family, 2 kids. Yep. You want to go away for, 5 days, go up to the coastal area. What's obviously hopefully going to be happening with average rates for the hotels, for the businesses, is that they would be going up because they see the pent up demand coming in and they can, capitalize on it. But what it actually means for the families wanting to travel is, I anyway got less money in the pocket. Maybe I even, are at risk of, cannot bring through my family.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the last thing you're thinking of is to spend €1,000 on a 5-day getaway, right? So that will be one interesting factor which we cannot judge on at the moment, but it's certainly something to consider there. And it will be interesting to see what that also does to additional spends within the locations if people are traveling. It will be interesting to see how average rates for hotel rooms are going to develop. I think in the very short term, you're going to see a very nice rise. But in the midterm, in the long term, probably as well, depending on how, let's say, that the labor situation also pans out and how safe and financially secure families and people are feeling. It might also be that you have a bigger competition on price again, right? So, yeah, obviously from a coastal perspective, you will see those tourists definitely coming back in large amounts. I'm fairly sure of that. But then for city hotels, looking at business, looking at corporate travel, looking at groups, I think in the very short term, to be seen rather pessimistic and very conservative, even in the, let's say, meeting and event space, we have seen positive examples right now that demand is penting up basically for periods like Q4, also September included, with a lot of meetings, for example, being booked in bigger meeting hotels located just outside of cities or within the city. And that's also a very interesting development to follow along. Yeah.
Yep. If I may add to that, I'm with Veit here, talking about the income loss that affected many people, not just in Germany but also around the globe. I think in Germany we're quite lucky that our unemployment rate hasn't risen that much compared to other countries, but still there is a significant amount of people who had lower household incomes the past year. But on the other end, I also see this huge increase in demand that will probably be there for the next summer as well, because on the one hand side, there will still be travel restrictions. So people who would have traveled overseas will still need to travel just within Germany because they can't board a plane and fly, let's say, to Indonesia or to the US unless they got vaccinated. And maybe even over there, especially in the Asia Pacific region, the vaccination campaigns aren't there yet or aren't completed yet. So I think this demand will also drive prices in the coastal regions, and there are enough people to spend significant money. I also saw a graph yesterday for US hotel prices, and the ADRs are now even surpassing 2019 levels. So for them, it's basically like it was like a V shape going all the way down in 2020 and now going up again. So what I feel is a very interesting constellation for the summer is that many hotels are still rather empty because the lead time became so short, and people are really waiting for the go to make their booking because they don't want to commit to anything and then need to cancel or rebook their booking, running the risk they can't travel. And so you have lots of hotels with capacities and lots of people willing to book, and probably almost within the same time frame when restrictions get released. So it's going to be interesting how they will find together in terms of pricing. Will the hotels be will they have made their analysis, and are they staying strong and bold with their higher pricing, or will there be lots of hotels running high discounts, and then the people will just jump on the discounts, and then it's maybe a win for the travelers because they made a good deal, but not so much of a win for the hotel industry because they basically were just giving away their rooms too quickly at a too low price. But I think this is going to be super much different between coastal regions and cities again, because we quickly, by prepping this podcast, we also touched on the supply side. And looking at the number of hotels that are still to be added in the German, Austrian, and Swiss region.
I didn't want to add another negative into that potentially, but increased competition.
It's increased competition, and we're talking about in the DACH region, as we call it, about 330 hotels to be built in 2021. Wow. And another 210 hotels on the way for 22. That means for both years, it's about 79,000 rooms added. And most of these rooms are added in the 3-star and 4-star sector. Mm-hmm. That's where most of the family-owned hotels are also sitting in. Yeah. And that's where the majority of the market also sits in. I mean, 56% of the German market sits in a 3-star area, and 25% sits in the 4-star area. So for this biggest chunk of the market, you're adding even more hotels. Many of them are branded, so it makes it even harder for the non-branded, privately owned hotels to get their fair share of the business when people are traveling again.
So we can only guess what's going to be happening, right? Maybe we're going to see some sort of shift down to, budget hotels being actually the ones profiting the most coming out of the pandemic. Because
or either scale, the high end luxury,
exactly.
And then the budget, and that 3-4 star is
And even though that in the short term supply is added within the 3 and 4 star area, but unless the whole pricing piece is not changing and is more adaptable to let's say the pockets of the people booking, it might also be that you see midterm, maybe long term, a slowdown actually or 3 and 4 star hotels going out of business in increased numbers. I
just want to pick up on one of your points earlier just before, and then lead into pick up on that last point there as well. Because there's so many variables, if I look at it just from comparing, again, not political decisions, but just restrictions, UK to Germany, if the German rates can continue at the level they are, and France as well, there are rumours going on at the moment that there will be restrictions on travelling to, they may put Germany and France into what we would call amber, which would mean that you're not necessarily, you may be free to travel, but back to, I think, how you're structured at the moment, when you come back, you then have to quarantine for a period of time. Now, we don't have a situation at the moment. People that come in have to quarantine, and they still have to do tests. But even if they show a negative test after 5 days, that doesn't mean they're released out of the quarantine. Okay. So almost the restriction is impacting it's not impacting the desire to travel, but it's impacting the reality of traveling, because people are going to say, well, why am I going to travel somewhere when, if I've got to come back, I've now got to quarantine for 14 days. So not only is it being influenced internally, but externally by decisions by other countries as to what quarantining, what testing procedures. And I guess that leads me back into, we can see that the city hotels are obviously affected by the meetings, events, corporate business. If we look at the coastal side for a moment, maybe if they're opening with limited occupancy, and I guess hopefully they worked out what their what their break-even point is, so they know where they need to be. If there is restricted travel into the country, or that travel into the country is reduced because of external governments' approach to quarantining their citizens when they come back, is the German psyche, is there enough demand, back to your point about domestic demand, is there enough there that would be able to support those coastal properties, so that demand for the Germans to want to travel and go away would be sufficient for those coastal properties to work through this summer period if there was other impacts on demand?
I would say yes, there is, because the German coastal region in the past, even before the COVID outbreak, was mostly booked by domestic travelers.
Okay, right.
Depending on which part you're looking at, of course, there are also guests from nearby countries. Sure. And yes, there is a little share of international travel, but this is now really one of the biggest things that is impacting the city regions. that there is no international travel or very limited international traveler because the bigger cities were also drawing in the international leisure travelers.
Yeah.
And the coastal regions were mostly booked by German travelers.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's also one very big difference I'm seeing between Zurich in Switzerland and more like an alpine ski resort in Switzerland. The alpine ski resort is basically well booked. Some hotels even sold out because the Swiss people are traveling within their own country,
Right.
because hotels are open. But Zurich is running on really very low KPIs because that city always had a very high share of international travelers.
Same with Vienna in that example. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So then I guess there also then is another factor that comes into this. So, I mean, that's looking for those green shoots, as we mentioned at the beginning. So there could be an argument that the coastal regions, which is why you're seeing the numbers, are showing that there could be a summer for them, and that there could be some business coming their way, and with a huge element already being taken up by historically the domestic market, then as soon as you guys are able to travel and stay and vacation, then in theory they should start to be okay. Is kind of what I took from that. The cities, that's a different scenario totally.
Yeah, and we can span this further, right? Now we've been focusing a little bit on coastal areas, but you also have the mountains, right? And you have other holiday destinations within Germany that are very popular, especially for domestic travel, that have always been popular for domestics, and that obviously will see that pent-up demand coming in. So, just looking here at Bavaria, I could well imagine that travel to the mountains is going to be exploding.
Well, that kind of picks up on what I wanted to lead to with another point there, because I think the psychology of traveling is going to be, and also picking up on that point about would it be budget hotels that may do better. I mean, there is an argument, and if I take my own personal example, with my family, my wife and two children, you've almost got four different views as to how they feel about traveling, depending on who you're talking to.
I want to go luxury.
But that doesn't even come into the equation. but then there's a point of, would they feel comfortable going and sitting down, for breakfast in a restaurant, buffet style, or have the buffet breakfast just gone now? Would you lend towards those isolated locations, as you say, sort of the coastal, the mountains, the forests, because you feel you've got that space built in? Do you go towards a more budget where you can be in your own room, and then you go out, and then you can sort of pick and choose whether you're, in a sense, self-catering and going into a supermarket, face mask wearing, whatever the protocols are, or you can choose a restaurant that seems to have appropriate provisions in place to make you feel comfortable. I think that psychology of the traveling, and then when you overlay that internationally as well, are people going to want to get on a plane because the airlines cannot afford to be blocking out? And we're just seeing now, in the US, they're starting to rebook the middle seat again. A lot of these low cost airlines can't afford to be taking one seat out because they know that they're not going to be able to cover the costs, and they're already losing money. So they're going to have to fill that plane. And are people going to feel comfortable enough getting on a plane full of 200, however many people it might be, not knowing? And that leads us to a completely different discussion, which we won't do today, about the vaccine passports. But there are psychological elements that come into that will have a factor and a discussion. I'm just interested on your guys' thoughts on that side of things.
Those are really good questions. What I found was the National Geographic, that basically magazine, did a poll back in December. They released the beginning of January, and 42% of the respondents were basically saying that they feel safer traveling to wilderness areas like national parks, coastal regions, and only 22% responded that they feel safer traveling to urban areas.
Right.
So which shows once again this focus on areas where you can socially distance, where you have less people, you can go out into the nature. But on the other hand, and that's, I'm not 100% sure if that's like contradictory to it or not, but there was one study done by Skift, which is this big industry leading news portal, and McKinsey, and then also they repeated something similar in their megatrend study together with American Express, that travelers even in 2020 have been keen on traveling. And back in these days, it wasn't even clear that there will be enough vaccines. And back in 2020, we even had no vaccines. But what really held them back was not being afraid too much of getting infected while traveling, but not having something meaningful to do at their destination because restaurants were closed, shops were closed, or any leisure attractions like amusement parks or something similar is not open. So I found that to be quite interesting. But also we need to understand it's mostly people who were traveling were of a younger crowd. So we saw that also in some of our client hotels, that the clientele has shifted, that the average age of people traveling, especially to more urban areas, was much younger than before. Because, and also looking back into China and how they came out of that first wave in the first lockdown, was mostly the younger people traveling because they are not in the risk group. They felt safe enough going on a plane or train ride. And as they have usually a lower budget to spend, we're back at that point, which hotel like market track will gain most, and that's budget, because it's affordable and you got your own room. You're not staying in a, let's say, hostel product where you need like in a 16-person dormitory, but you have your own room, you have your own shower, your bathroom, and that just feels safe.
Exactly, and and then it's very interesting to see, okay, what is the group of 30 to 50-year-old people thinking, right? Because that's usually been the group and will be the group also moving forward that has income to spend and that can afford 3 and 4-star hotels, even 5-star hotels. But from them, obviously, with the bigger pockets, it is questionable if they are not vaccinated so far, as in many countries, which kind of impact that will have on their safety feeling to travel, actually, and how long it will take then, obviously, for them to get out of their comfort zone in that sense.
No, I think that's a good point. And back to what you guys said about pricing and how you see that being affected. Well, you're picking up on your surveys there. You know, if you're thinking about, well, quite a large percentage of people were looking to travel to more remote destinations. Now, okay, I think you said it was about 46% or something like that. That's fine, but that's still not necessarily the level of demand that is needed to fill your hotel if it's spread across all the properties there. So you might start to see an increase in demand coming, but at what point will that start to top out? At a stage where you're thinking, if demand is going to be picking up, can we hold our prices, or can we even start to increase our prices slightly? And then the demand plateaus out, and you suddenly end up in this ambiguous position. Do you see what I'm driving at there?
Yeah. And it's a very interesting point. Like I don't know if there's any right or wrong take here, but one of the things that strikes my mind is like, it will also be very much about the product that the hoteliers are able to place in front of their customers, right? So if customers see they have a purpose, they have a meaningful stay there, they will see that the hotel offers things left and right. They can dine, they have some sort of packages they can book. They make use of, let's say, local or regional partnerships in terms of, activities going on as far as they would be allowed. Then I think people would also be inclined to, say, yes, this is where I'm booking, because I got something that I will be able to do when I'm there. So from a pricing perspective, the hotels that come in with a strong value proposition and with a strong product, which in the most recent past, I think a lot of hoteliers have been working on to upgrade their value proposition in that sense. Those hotels, they will have a big advantage over hotels that obviously stick to whatever they have done in the past and just simply hope for being able to swim on that wave of competitors trying to charge high rates, and they can probably hide a little bit in the back there and also capitalize on it. It will be interesting to see what's going to happen there, but I think that product piece is going to be so decisive at the end.
Till, any comments in on that? I mean, I've got something else that comes to mind, so.
Okay.
I didn't want to cut across you if you had something to say.
Yeah, what we've been seeing with our clients, but which has generally also been proven by the industry, is that people just tend to look even more on the quality scores that hotels have on the big OTAs, on the reviews, especially in terms of cleanliness, comfort, and caring staff. So that becomes much more important. And those hoteliers who've worked on that heavily during the last year and also in preparation for the summer season this year, I think will greatly benefit from it.
And I think as well, one of the areas, I mean, when you've got such limited revenue coming in potentially, you've always got to try and maximize that as much as you can. And I think, areas around that upselling piece, later checkouts, those kind of elements, they're not going to be massive revenue generators that's going to make the difference of someone booking your room at €200. But if you've got somebody coming, being able to offer some other packages, perks, options in there where you can at least be maximizing that revenue of that particular booking would seem like to say relatively straightforward is wrong, because I guess it's like everything depends what system you want to use. But to not look at that as an option of increasing your revenue per individual staying would seem like almost throwing potential money away. Just as a kind of final comment, what are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely, I think it's now more than ever, hoteliers are going to be asked to, optimize different revenue streams and also find new revenue streams that they can capitalize on. And I think the hoteliers further focusing only on the room side of things, they will see a threshold very quickly to be reached, and that is not going to be working.
Yeah, it makes sense. It comes back to your point about those that are operating as they always have done and just hoping this will go away at some point in time, and those that are just being a bit more proactive. Some simple things then, because I think that's a pretty detailed, multifaceted, multi-layered discussion about what's going on. So having laid out the scenario as you guys see it and what you're experiencing, what are you saying? Not what would you, what are you actually saying? How are you guiding your clients? What are areas that you are advising them to be considering as we are seeing these shifts and changes over the days and coming weeks? Any kind of advice?
Well, the always the advice that we've also been giving in the first lockdown, basically about a year ago, is really do your homework in terms of all the base foundation of your distribution strategy. So make sure that you have all the right content, that your descriptions are in place, that your hygiene measurements are displayed across the board, because people are really looking for it. And then on the other hand, really have a look at your historical data. I know that it's not 100% comparable prior to COVID outbreak and right now, but still, let's say on the summer weekends when you've always been sold out, when you're now in a leisure destination, there's I don't really see a reason why you should not be sold out when everybody is allowed to travel again.
Mm-hmm.
So make sure that you get your pricing right, your demand analysis right,
Mm-hmm.
and then have a look into package pricing, so driving other revenue streams as well, because people are really looking also for this like full-blown holiday package in a sense that they don't want to worry if the restaurant across the street has enough seats available, or if they still run on half the capacity because of some restrictions, or if they're even closed at all and you can't find a proper place to eat. So people are really looking for this full experience, and as Veit pointed out, have some really interesting local collaborations as well to maybe offer something in your packages and your offers to the guest that your competitor has not.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Veit, anything to add into that?
Yeah, I think no. Just from a general perspective, I think one of the things that every hotelier is doing is to stay alert to whatever is happening in terms of restrictions out there, and which kind of impact that immediately has on the movements from bookings and in their business in general, because it also decides on how quickly they can scale up or not. So knowing your break-even point in the hotel is probably something, I know you've also done a podcast on that, is certainly something that every hotelier should be very clear about right now. So, because if there's one piece of planning you can do right now, then it is at least to know exactly at which kind of, let's say, projected or guest occupancy rate you would probably be able to open up and not run on a loss, on a massive loss. So that's one thing to figure out. And otherwise, watch your pickup as well. Plus, check on all the revenue streams you can think of in your hotel and see which kind of things you can package up with your room, or you can optimize on solely. So those would be the things that I would throw out there.
Are you seeing any impact around length of stay at all? Are people maybe shortening? They want to get away, but maybe shorter breaks rather than longer breaks, or is that not having any bearing at all? Is that something to keep an eye on in terms of how you're packaging your product?
I don't have any data on it, to be honest, right now. Till, do you?
In those leisure hotels that I'm currently responsible of, I rather see the difference, so that people are rather adding a night.
Okay, going the other way.
Okay.
Or even we saw quite some bookings in the summer for 5 or 7 nights or even longer, which we haven't seen in the past because people were switching their like 1 week, 2 week holiday that they were supposed to do in another country back to that specific property.
Okay, that makes sense. And just in terms of making sure that you are reaching as many avenues as you can to try and gain this booking, thinking of distribution channels, are you seeing any areas that are stronger than others, or different approaches which would maybe realize your highest proportion of chance?
What's the top things you can see too for the, let's say, holiday destinations?
So what we've been seeing is there is quite some good volume to be gained through flash sale providers. Became stronger and stronger in the past years, even already back in 18 and 19. And on the other hand, also there are some special German providers that then sell through intermediaries, larger volumes that are packaged with, let's say, tickets to an amusement park or to attractions within the city. So that has also yielded some additional revenues.
In the medium term, now with Google obviously providing the free booking link, right? There's a high chance of hotels being now finally able to foster a little bit their direct booking approach a bit more. So we might see a little bit of a shift there, but also obviously, I mean, Google is doing that for a reason, right? If you want to be seen, if you want to have some sort of advantages, which probably every hotel wants to have right now, you got to be paying. So the effects basically on the hotel's business is to be seen, but it obviously delivers a chance to shift your business mix around a little bit, and also obviously work on your more positive profit conversion at the end of the day, which is a very necessary point. And otherwise I think Till mentioned it with the local partnerships. I think they are really worth looking into if you can find local distribution partners. That's in addition could even be fed in with rates, inventory, and anything else automatically.
And that's what I think, it is back to that, looking at those local partnerships. Again, back to your point, thinking about your product, what you're offering. I remember my point. You mentioned the flash sales. And I think that comes back and links back to something you said earlier, where you're seeing that I think you said the booking window is a lot shorter now than it used to be. I guess that lends itself to those kind of distribution channels where people are making a very short decision once they know what the various restrictions might be. But I think you're right around the partnerships and again, how you can feed that in to pull the package together. Are all important elements. I think we've pretty much covered a lot of what we wanted to, and a lot of ground there. Are there any final points from your guys' side, or have we covered everything you wanted to get across?
I think we covered a lot from what we wanted to discuss, but it's obviously a never-ending discussion. Like, we could go on here for a bit.
Well, we could revisit again in 2 weeks.
Really enjoyed that.
Again.
I really enjoyed that.
It was good. It's quite nice to talk about something in a different way. It all impacts into what we normally talk about, but coming at it from more of a macro level than a micro level. So hopefully that was of value. And to those who have been watching and listening, this is a different type of piece of content that we do. So if you liked it, would be great to get some feedback. If you didn't or wanted something different, obviously again would be great to get that feedback. But guys, as far as this conversation is done, I think we're wrapped up. So thanks so much for your time.
Thanks very much.
To chat with you.
Thanks very much.
Take care.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you very much. Looking for hotels to open up in the near future.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Keep those fingers crossed.
So that's the end of the discussion around the current challenges facing the German hotel market. Thanks again to Veit and Till for joining us. If you like the discussion, please don't forget to give a thumbs up. I know every video asks for it, but by giving a thumbs up or subscribing, you help raise the profile of this channel, and in that way, you help us to help others. If you are interested in other expert insights, here is our playlist, and please don't forget to subscribe. Here is the button. Anyway, thanks again for watching.